It was heartbroken. It was. I have no word to say. I'm speechless,
A teenager struck and killed in Vaughan.
Tonight, a tragic scene north of the city. At least 2 vehicles involved in the deadly crash. Good evening. It happened before the start of the school day. The victim, just 15 years old.
Tonight, questions are being raised about whether a broken crosswalk button may have played a role in the crash. CTV's Beth McDonnell joins us live from Weston Road and Villa Royale Avenue with the story. Beth.
Nathan, everyone I've spoken with today is just devastated, asking how this could happen. Here is the button in question. You can see I'm pushing it. It doesn't make a noise and it doesn't light up, and it doesn't appear to trigger the signal for pedestrians to start walking either. Headphones, a backpack, and clothing are placed into evidence bags. This is where a 15-year-old boy was struck and killed in Vaughan.
It was heartbroken. It was. I have no word to say. I'm speechless,
Shortly before 7:30 in the morning, York Regional Police say the boy was struck by 2 vehicles near Weston Road and Villa Royale Avenue. The initial belief, the teen was crossing from the east to the west, that he was thrown by the first vehicle and hit by the second. Both drivers remained on scene. A busy intersection, police say, from vehicles and pedestrians, as there are several schools in the area.
We are hoping that through any dash cam footage or any witnesses that were in the area at the time, through their information, that we're able to piece together what happened.
At one nearby secondary school, some students were visibly upset.
Sad. Like, no one should have to die that way. Especially cars should be paying more attention.
It's terrible. By 2 cars. That shouldn't have happened. It's bad.
Some pedestrians have concerns about crossing the intersection. With this group, the pedestrian button doesn't change the light with the orange hand to a walking person. They decide to cross anyway without the proper signal. CTV News then went around the intersection a few times. We found the pedestrian signals worked well on the south end of the intersection, but were unreliable on the north end.
I am very, very sad because I also have grandchildren, 15 years.
Police haven't said if the boy was using the crosswalk, and it's not known if the lights were working at the time he was hit. Next to the button here, there are some instructions from York Region. We reached out to the municipality and it says it's fully cooperating with the investigation. Police say they are doing everything they can to support the community with youth engagements, officers at nearby schools, victim services being offered to the family, as well as support to the first responders who are here investigating this tragedy. Reporting live, I'm Beth McDonnell. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Beth. In Toronto, police were on the scene at a Scarborough Park where a body was discovered. This was at West Brookdale Park near Midland and Ellesmere. Investigators have not said how the man died or if the circumstances are considered suspicious. They say the coroner's office will determine the cause of death.
One person is dead after an early morning house fire in Leslieville. Emergency crews were called to a home on Coxwell, north of Dundas, just before 5:30 this morning. They extinguished the flames on the second floor and pulled one person from the building who did not survive. Toronto Fire Chief Matthew Pegg said as many as 7 people are displaced from the home, which he said was effectively operating as a rooming house. The chief said residents indicated the property may not have had working smoke alarms.
We will also undertake a full inspection of the building to determine if the building was in compliance with the Ontario Fire Code, and that will include smoke alarms. If that is not the case, we'll take the necessary enforcement action.
Toronto Fire Services will work with police and the Ontario Office of the Fire Marshal to determine the origin, circumstances, and cause of the fire.
And fire crews were called into action again in the East End, this time at a restaurant at Queen and Waverley this afternoon. First responders were met by heavy smoke, but they were able to extinguish the blaze in the basement. No injuries reported here. Still to come, trying to recover from a cyber attack. Hackers target the Toronto Public Library, how officials are trying to turn the page and get people back to the books.
Today was deadline day for thousands of Canadian businesses forced to pay back their pandemic loans.
It's been almost 4 years since the government doled out nearly $50 billion, and many businesses say they are still struggling and they want an extension. But officials say time's up. CTV's Sean Lathong joins us live with the story. Sean.
Well, Michelle and Nathan, the maximum amount a business could have received was $60,000 in these loans. But if they repaid the loans by today, 20,000 of those could be forgivable. If they don't pay, they owe the whole 60. Working inside his restaurant near Yonge and Eglinton, Derek Venegas has just paid back his Canadian Emergency Business Account, or CEBA loan.
And without all that, we would not have survived. So without the loan and everything else, I don't think I would have survived. But because of it, we're here today.
Mia Brunch Bar opened just months before the pandemic. As CEBA loans were made available to businesses suffering, Venegas took advantage of both rounds of CEBA relief. $60,000 total through CEBA. If he paid back $40,000 by today, the last $20,000 would be forgiven.
So I decided to pay off the $40,000. And as long as I paid off the $40,000 on time, I get to keep the grant.
With a busy kitchen, they're looking forward to 2024. But many restaurants and businesses in this city aren't in such a good spot.
So 82% of independent operators took out a CEBA loan. We've got 1 in 5 of those operators who are looking at closing 1 or more of their locations.
Kelly Higginson, CEO of Restaurants Canada, says inflation and the slow return of customers to restaurants makes this a bad time for CEBA loans to be recalled.
We've got 53% of the industry operating at a loss or barely breaking even, and that was 10% before the pandemic. So there is a very clear connection there.
And it isn't just restaurants. The coal miner's daughter clothing chain are having a CEBA sale to help pay back their loans. Others have paid it back, but say this has put pressure on their cash flow for some time to come.
We've faced inflationary pressure, staffing costs, input costs, massive increases in rent. Meanwhile, we haven't been able to increase our pricing for the last 5 years.
The Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses says there has not been enough time to sufficiently recover from the heavy lockdowns during COVID.
I mean, if you're a restaurateur, a gym owner, an event space, you lost over 400 days to full closure. That's not including the capacity restrictions, the 10%, the 25%, the different color codes and numbers that we had coming out.
The initial deadline to repay CEBA loans was the end of 2022. That was pushed back to late 2023 and then to today. And while some businesses continue to struggle, the Prime Minister was firm that the deadline would not be moved back again.
There are plenty of financial institutions who are there to give low-cost loans to be able to benefit those businesses as they continue to repay it over the coming years.
If they can survive the coming years. Well, you heard the CEO of Restaurants Canada talking about 1 in 5 businesses considering closing the doors. She says this day might be a day of demarcation where after today we'll start seeing those restaurants closing in and around the downtowns of this country. Reporting live, I'm Sean Lathong. Nathan, Michelle, send it back to you.
All right, thank you, Sean. York Regional Police are asking for the public's help tracking down an arson suspect after a suspicious fire was caught on camera in Richmond Hill. This is footage from around 1 in the morning Wednesday at a commercial yard near Newkirk and Crosby Road. York Regional Police say a suspect doused 2 truck cabs with a flammable liquid and lit them on fire. The video appeared to show him recording the scene afterwards. Police and fire crews responded and there were no injuries. They're asking any potential witnesses or anyone with video in the area to come forward.
2 Peel police cruisers and 2 streetlights were damaged this morning in Mississauga after a driver tried to flee a traffic stop. This happened around 9:30 near Burnhamthorpe and Credit View Roads. The unnamed male suspect was taken to hospital as a precaution and is now charged with failing to comply and flight from police.
Meanwhile, a man's facing charges after a pair of crashes in Scarborough at around 2:30 yesterday afternoon. Police tried to carry out a traffic stop near Kingston and St. Clair. The car instead fled and hit 2 separate vehicles, including one with 2 officers inside. No injuries were reported, but 27-year-old Peter Brady faces a number of driving and fraud charges. Raptors president Masai Ujiri preaches patience after trading the last piece of their 2019 championship team to Indiana. The plan for the future coming up.
But first, take a look at this. After days of dark and dreary and icy cold weather, the sunshine, it made an appearance today. May not have substantially boosted our chilly conditions, but it likely did lift some spirits. It's always nice to see the sun. The sun has set tonight as we take a live look outside. We got some folks on the rink. It's still cold, but luckily they're probably keeping warm because they're moving. But certainly today it was a big improvement from the past few days. Just some cloudy conditions this hour. You might see a few flurries while they're playing down there on the ice, while other areas outside of the GTA have a bit more to contend with. Let's have a look. There are some watches and warnings. Snow squall warning in orange there north of Lake Erie. They're expecting nearly up to 15 centimeters up towards Owen Sound, 10 to 15 centimeters of snow possible near Georgian Bay. I'll show you why, because we've got some lake effect snow potentially dumping some of the heavy stuff in those areas. But if you look at for us in Toronto and the GTA, really just the potential for flurries and nothing that's going to make your drive tricky or anything. It's mostly just the cold that you have to keep in mind if you're heading out. -5 right now, feeling like -10 with the wind chill. We are going to have a warm up. We do, though, have to contend with a few more cold days and a bit of flurries in the mix. We'll break it all down for you a little later in the newscast. But first, Toronto Raptors fans, they continue to reflect tonight on the loss of one of the team's star players.
Pascal Siakam traded to the Indiana Pacers. The Raps are in action again tonight, taking on the Bulls. Today, management talked about the new team taking shape and whether a new era is now underway. CTV's John Musselman is live outside Scotiabank Arena with the story. John.
Well, Nathan, I'll start by letting you know that Masai Ujiri was a bit emotional talking about Pascal Siakam today and this trade, but as you mentioned, he made it very clear that it's time to rebuild this team. Pascal Siakam has always been a fan favorite, known as Spicy P. He has spent his entire NBA career with the Raptors, but his days in Toronto are over. Team president Masai Ujiri got emotional today while talking about Siakam as a player and as a person.
Yeah, 2 African guys that won the championship, share that with them. And all NBA, all All-Star, all everything. Again, I say to you guys that that guy's success is my success, no matter where he is. Yeah.
Siakam is now an Indiana Pacer. He was traded for 3 players and 3 first-round draft picks. Siakam posted a message on social media after arriving in his new city.
Just touched down. Super excited. Can't wait to meet all you guys. And I'm just super excited, man. Let's get it. Go Pacers.
The Raptors are calling this a time of change. This is not the team it once was when it won the championship in 2019. All those players are now gone. Superfan Nav Badia says it's the right thing to do for the future of the team.
I think Masai and Bobby Webster's, they know what they are doing. And I believe that they have, maybe in the short term, it's the Indiana who's going to get better right away. And I think ours is the future. We are building around Scotty Barnes.
Scotty Barnes, who has emerged to be the player we're going to build around.
Fans express mixed emotions about losing Siakam.
Definitely needed some young pieces to the team, Raptors, so it was time to move on from Siakam. He did a lot for us though.
Everyone from the championship's gone, so it's a little heartbreaking. It's a new era, but it's the young boys' time now.
Even the Prime Minister weighed in on this. Justin Trudeau posting this message on social media. Quote, "Thank you at Peaskills43. It's sad to see one of my favorite Raptors go, but we're grateful for what you've done for the team, for the fans, and for the sport. Best of luck, Spicy P." Siakam averaged 17 points per game. He was set to become a free agent at the end of the season. And again, the Toronto Raptors, the new-look Raptors, will take on the Chicago Bulls tonight at Scotiabank Arena. The game starts at 7:30. Reporting live, I'm John Musselman. I'll send it back to you.
All right, thank you, John. Now to the face-off at City Hall over Toronto's budget plans, already facing headwinds for a proposed double-digit property tax hike.
Now the city's police chief says there will be real challenges for the service if councillors don't pass their full budget request for 2024.
Able to hire towards the operational needs we need to try to deliver adequate, effective police services.
Police Chief Myron Demkew appeared before Toronto's Budget Committee to face questions and push back on changes to their requested funding levels of $1.186 billion. City staff had shaved $12.6 million off that figure amid belt-tightening efforts. Toronto police say the full amount is necessary to ensure enough staffing across the city.
We want to and need to be responsive to what I hear from the community on a daily basis everywhere I go, that there is a serious concern around response times and other major crime indicators that are going up in the city. And people in Toronto have spoken to me very, very clearly that they'd like to see an investment in policing to increase our capacity to better respond to the needs of our communities.
We're talking about an investment in safety in terms of net new staff and officers, and we're talking about carrying on the service as it is and adding to it each year. It's just a matter of how much can we afford to add, and I'm pretty sure that you could all agree we are stretching the affordability of Torontonians in this budget about as far as we can go.
Budget Chief Shelley Carroll said police could look for savings in places other than reducing the number of officers deployed.
And tonight will be the third and final telephone town hall for residents to bring up questions and concerns over the city's proposed 2024 budget. A 10.5% property tax hike is included as officials cite Toronto's $1.8 billion shortfall. The Budget Committee will hear more from residents at hearings next week. It's been months since hackers took aim at the Toronto Public Library, and officials are still trying to turn the page on the cyber attack.
Files were stolen with online services shut down, but restoration efforts are still underway. CTV's Allison Hurst joins us live with the next chapter for the library. Allison.
City staff are working to get systems back online, things like the library website and computers that have been out of service ever since that cyber attack that they became aware of in October. Computers, photocopiers, and scanners are all still out of order months after a cyber attack.
The library is working very hard to get the system up by the end of the month. They're phasing in the recovery. More to come, hopefully soon.
Returned books have been stored inside 12 off-site trailers until they can be electronically signed in, and staff have been checking them out by hand.
Making sure books are back in a timely manner has been slowed down because, when we had our computers up and running, your book was overdue, you got an automated generated call saying, hey, you have a book overdue, or you got an email.
The ransomware attack came to staff's attention on October 28th. Information on current and former employees was hacked, including social insurance numbers and government-issued IDs. Mayor Olivia Chow says the library's IT wasn't part of the city's main system, which is much more secure.
No, the library was not part of it, neither was the zoo.
The zoo also got hit by a cyber attack just last week. There, too, current, former, and retired staff information is believed to have been stolen, including social insurance numbers and home addresses. To try and prevent this from happening again, Library Board Chair Paul Ainsley says they've been planning to bring all systems, including the library and zoo, under the city's main one, but it takes time.
We're being very careful. We don't want to have a ticking time bomb tucked away somewhere in our system that's going to impact the data and personal information of our patrons.
At the same time, Mayor Chow announced the library will be open 10,000 extra hours, which includes several branches opening on Sundays. Mayor Chow says that she hopes that things are going to return back to normal and that they expect everything will be back up and running by the end of the month. Reporting live, I'm Allison Hurst. Back to you in studio.
Thanks, Allison. A potential ban on cell phones in the classroom took a major step forward last night as trustees at the Toronto District School Board voted to set new limits on device use.
Gone are the days where you consider cell phones just a distraction. They're tools being used by millions of kids around the world right now.
As it stands, students can use their phones for educational, health, and other exempted reasons. TDSB Chair Rachel Chernos-Lynn said the current rules aren't working, citing research and complaints about cell phone use interrupting learning. The board says it will consult with the community as it formulates its new policy.
While frustration continues over the delayed Eglinton Crosstown, another major light rail project in the GTA is getting a boost from the province. Transportation Minister Pradmi Sarkaria has directed Metrolinx to alter plans for the Hazel-McCallion LRT. The 18-kilometer route was set to stretch from Brampton Gateway Terminal to Port Credit GO Station in Mississauga. The new plans will see a loop through downtown Mississauga revived after an earlier cancellation. The changes would also see the LRT line extended into downtown Brampton.
A federal investigation has concluded there were numerous failures by police who responded to the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas.
Law enforcement response at Robb Elementary School on May 24, 2022, and in the hours and days after, was a failure that should not have happened. We hope to honor the victims and the survivors by working together to try to prevent anything like this from ever happening again, here or anywhere.
A Justice Department report says first responders did not coordinate immediate entry into classrooms. Several officers did enter quickly but retreated when fired upon. Some believe they had to wait for heavier equipment or a tactical team before moving in. Children waited for over an hour before officers stormed a classroom to take the gunman down. The report says the priority must be neutralizing the shooter and aiding anyone in harm's way.
It's a position contrary to Canada and many other allies. Israel's president says he opposes the establishment of a Palestinian state as part of any post-war scenario.
The comment came on a day that saw more violence elsewhere, with tensions rising between two neighboring countries. CTV's Judy Trin reports.
The remnants of a retaliatory strike in Iran. Pakistan said it was targeting the hideouts of extremists.
This morning's action was taken in light of credible intelligence of impending large-scale terrorist activities.
Iran made the same argument in reverse when it launched drone attacks on Pakistan, Iraq, and Syria earlier this week. At the World Economic Forum, Israel's president pointed out Iran's ability to sow chaos.
There is an empire of evil emanating from Tehran, spending billions of dollars in arms and money and people's well-being to derail the entire stability of the world and the region.
Iran is also arming Houthi rebels in Yemen, a group the White House just redesignated as terrorists. For the fifth time in a week, U.S. strikes hit Houthi anti-ship missiles. But Houthi leaders vowed to continue targeting vessels until a ceasefire takes place in Gaza. Today in Rafah, another 16 Palestinians were killed by an Israeli airstrike. You kill my children, then you send me medication. What use will I have for that? Israel says 200 trucks a day carrying humanitarian aid are getting through, but the United Nations says it's just a trickle of what's needed. More than 60,000 people are injured and 2 million people are at risk of starvation. Today in a news conference, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu presented a vision for the future that does not include an independent Palestinian state. He said Israel must have security control over all the territory west of the Jordan River. Netanyahu's words are in direct conflict with the two-state solution that most of the international community, including the U.S. and Canada, support. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
NATO is preparing to launch its biggest military exercise in decades next week.
The alliance will demonstrate its ability to reinforce the Euro-Atlantic area via transatlantic movement of forces from North America. This reinforcement will occur during a simulated emerging conflict scenario against a near-peer adversary.
90,000 personnel will take part in the war games. They'll last until the end of May in Europe. They're intended to deter Russia from targeting a member country. The alliance beefed up security on its eastern flank in the months prior to the invasion of Ukraine.
Charges have been laid in connection with one of the largest wildfires in Nova Scotia's recorded history. A 22-year-old man is accused of lighting the Barrington Lake fire. It was ignited in May and burned 23,000 hectares. Dalton Clark Stewart of Villagedale, Nova Scotia, was charged yesterday with lighting a fire on privately owned land without the owner's permission, failing to take reasonable efforts to prevent the spread of the fire, and leaving a fire unattended. He's scheduled to appear in court March 7th.
The largest land transfer in Canadian history has taken place from the federal government to Nunavut.
Today begins a new chapter in the history of Nunavut, a transformative chapter. Now, the formal name for this process is devolution, but in many ways it's more of an evolution. an evolution in our partnership as the federal government and the territory, and also an evolution in the progress towards self-determination for Inuit living in Nunavut.
The Prime Minister was in Iqaluit today to sign over responsibilities to the territorial government. They include powers over 2 million square kilometers of public lands and water, as well as non-renewable resources. The transfers will happen over the next 3 years. The Northwest Territories and Yukon went through a similar process years ago.
A new poll offers a glimpse into what people on both sides of the Canada-U.S. border feel is important to national identity. 84% of respondents to the Pew Research Center poll said speaking English or French is very or somewhat important to being Canadian. In the U.S., 78% prioritize being able to speak English, the most common tongue in a country, without an official language.
Meanwhile, 81% of Canadian respondents also linked customs and traditions to their national identity. 71% of U.S. participants said customs and traditions are somewhat or very central to being American.
The king and his daughter-in-law are said to be doing well following news they are each dealing with their own medical issues.
His Majesty.
He's fine, thank you very much.
Thank
Looking forward to getting back to work.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
The Queen spoke today as her husband awaits next week's corrective procedure for a benign enlarged prostate. Meanwhile, Prince William left the London hospital where his wife is recovering after undergoing successful abdominal surgery. Kate is expected to remain there for up to 2 weeks.
4 astronauts are headed to the International Space Station tonight on a commercially arranged flight.
Ignition, engine full power, and liftoff. Go active 3.
The crew blasted off from the Kennedy Space Center this afternoon for a 36-hour voyage to the orbiting lab. It's the 3rd mission organized by Axiom. The Houston-based company puts astronauts sponsored by foreign governments and private enterprise into orbit. Each seat for the trip costs at least $55 million. Coming up, just a few weeks old and already off and running. We check out the adorable new baby rhino video from the Toronto Zoo a little later in the show.
And I'm Pat Foran. Coming up on Consumer Alert, a man from Orillia says after waiting more than 3 years to have shoulder surgery, he traveled to Alberta to have it done. He thought it was covered by OHIP, but was shocked to find out he'll have to pay most of the $28,000 bill. I'll have that story just ahead.
Environment Canada reporting a light snow shower this hour in Toronto. Our chopper flying live above Whitby. The wind chill making it feel like -10 out there. And note there is a chance of some light snow before you wake up tomorrow. Here's a look at your school day forecast. By the way, it's a PA day for the TDSB elementary kids. -9 when you walk out the door at 8 a.m. tomorrow, but it'll feel like -17 with the wind chill, so bundle up. -9 at noon. Doesn't warm up much, but the wind's back off. -8 by 3 p.m. We do have flurries throughout the day tomorrow. It will warm up considerably. We'll tell you when, a little later. And stay with us. We've got another full night of great shows for you right here on CTV.
The Ontario government announced it's expanding the number of private clinics to try and clear a backlog of surgeries in the province.
But the news came too late for an Orillia man who says he recently had to travel to Alberta for surgery, and he is shocked he has also been forced to pay for it. Here's Pat Foran and a Consumer Alert. Pat.
Thanks, Michelle. And Nathan, the man says he was on a waiting list for years in Ontario and couldn't take the pain any longer. He had the surgery done at a private clinic in Calgary. It was $28,000, and he'll have to pay for most of it.
I had bone on bone, and I had terrible arthritis.
Paul Perdames of Orillia says after more than 3 years of being on a waiting list to have shoulder surgery, he decided to check out options in other provinces. He says as the pain became worse, in October of 2022, he underwent a procedure at a private clinic in Calgary.
I was going downhill fast, so I had to do something. Either you live like that or get something done.
Perdames says before he had the surgery, he contacted OHIP and was told a percentage of the operation would be covered. As a non-resident of Alberta, he was charged $28,000. He was shocked when OHIP paid him less than $2,000 back.
I thought I was going to get reimbursed for it through OHIP.
Perdames was told by OHIP ministry staff have determined the requested facility is not a publicly funded hospital. Any facility charges are the responsibility of the patient.
We can reduce wait times.
Ontario's health minister announced the province is expanding the number of private clinics performing certain types of surgeries to reduce the backlog. Patients using them won't have to pay for the procedures.
By doing more surgeries in state-of-the-art, convenient and safe facilities, which will always be paid for by your OHIP card, never a credit card.
Perdames says because his surgery couldn't be done in Ontario, he wants OHIP to cover the total cost of his operation.
I've been working my whole life paying into OHIP, but when I had to use it, it wasn't there for me.
When CTV News reached out to OHIP regarding Perdames' case, the Ministry of Health said it couldn't comment on proceedings under appeal. Perdames now lives almost completely pain-free and is hopeful he'll get more money to help cover his $28,000 bill. And Ontarians are also going to the U.S. to have surgeries done, and they're paying out of pocket for the procedures. If you have an operation outside of Ontario, in most cases, you should expect you'll have to pay for it. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca. My Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
All right, to the forecast, another chilly day, but I guess the good news is eventually we're going to get out of this cold snap and get kind of back to normal, even above seasonal.
Next week's looking a little bit mild, but it's nice to see, look, nobody's scared away by the weather this hour at the ice rink. Lots of people out, and actually today it did feel a lot better than it did the past few days, although it is still cold. I'll show you the temperatures at this hour. Some light snow showers, by the way, reported in Toronto. -5 currently, but there is wind in the mix, so it feels like -10. You definitely want to bundle up. The radar is showing there some of the flurries in Toronto, but if you look towards Niagara Falls and west to London, they're contending with some heavier stuff up towards Barrie too. So keep that in mind if you're traveling anywhere. But for us in Toronto, not much. It's really the cold at this point. -9 is the low tonight, but with the wind, feeling like -15, a little bit milder towards Niagara Falls and Hamilton, colder up towards Peterborough. Tomorrow, we're not going to get too warm, so we're still cold, not as cold as it was Monday, Tuesday, but the high tomorrow -8, feeling like -11 with the wind chill, so do factor that into your plans as you go about your day. Here's a forecast radar for your Friday, so you can see pretty much just cloudy, and while there is some snow and precipitation in other areas, not really for our region, although you will, expect to see some flakes throughout the day for your Friday. Here is your 7-day forecast. So we do have flurries on tap, feeling cold with that wind chill. Saturday brings a lot more sunshine, which will be really nice, but it's not too warm. The high is -9. And then on Sunday, you'll see the warm up start to begin. The high -2. It'll feel really nice by the time we get there, especially with the sun in the mix. And then we see a shift come next week. Look at the high, 1 degree, that's above seasonal. We've got some sun. And then on Tuesday, it starts to get unsettled. And that's where, because it's mild, highs of 1 on Tuesday, 4 on Wednesday, you're dealing with snow, rain sort of thing. It really depends on the temperature at the time that the system moves in. And then Thursday, nice and cloudy, but no precipitation, just 3 degrees. So if you like it mild, we've got some of that coming. If you like it cold, well, we have a few more days of it.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Also tonight, award season's in full swing. We take a look at some of the Hollywood blockbusters in the running across the pond after the break.
A major funding announcement today promises to expand brain health research in this province.
We'll get the details from CTV's health reporter Pauline Chan.
The Ontario government is investing $65 million in OBI over the next 3 years. I know the Institute already has a solid lineup of brain research networks, but it is great to hear that they're expanding their support so that organizations like CAMH can continue making a difference in the lives of patients with brain disorders.
The funding announced at CAMH will cover 5 main areas of study. They are cerebral palsy, concussion, depression, neurodevelopmental disorders, and youth mental health.
The funding announcement includes $60 million that was previously announced in the budget and $5 million for a new Centre for Analytics.
Tom Mickelson, president and scientific director of the Ontario Brain Institute, says OBI supports seamless connections between research, commercial initiatives, and patient care. And the Centre for Analytics will run from several locations across Ontario.
And if you have enough data, you can start looking at some very sophisticated ways of looking at analytics, even including AI machine learning and things like the generative AI models that were ChatGPT.
CAMH VP of Research, Aristotle Voinesco, says the initiative looking at youth mental health is also new and will deal with young people living with multiple conditions.
What we call multimorbidity, which is basically the fact that a lot of kids suffer from multiple mental health diagnoses, not just one. And through that, we want to understand what the different subsets of kids are and then target different clinical interventions to help them get better.
Minister Dunlop says she knows the importance of this research as she has a child with epilepsy. 1 in 3 Ontarians is living with some type of brain disorder. The Ontario funding is to be given over the next 3 years. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
A new survey shows Canadians would give governments across the country a failing grade when it comes to providing adequate mental health services. The findings come from the Canadian Alliance on Mental Illness and Mental Health. 3,200 adults were polled online in November on categories like access, confidence, satisfaction, and effectiveness of publicly funded mental health services. Ottawa and the provinces were given a collective grade of F, down from D last year. Here in Ontario, the Ford government has said is working to improve timely access to mental health care.
Health Canada is recalling a pain and fever medicine for children. There is a potential risk of overdose. The recall has been issued for 1 lot of pediatrics acetaminophen oral solutions. Some bottles contain a higher than acceptable amount of acetaminophen. The medicine is sold over the counter for children aged 2 to 11. An overdose of acetaminophen can cause serious illness and could even be fatal.
Another major music artist is getting the biopic treatment. Deadline reports Universal has optioned the rights to the best-selling autobiography of Red Hot Chili Peppers frontman Anthony Kiedis. Scar Tissue hit the New York Times bestsellers list in 2004 and touched on Kiedis' experiences with drug addiction and how they shaped his life and his music.
And after a debut at TIFF, a restored concert film from Talking Heads is heading back to the big screen. Variety reports the band's 1984 concert movie, Stop Making Sense, will return to theaters across Canada, the U.S., and UK in a series of residencies this summer to mark the film's 40th anniversary. A tribute album is also in the works.
A sequel series to Disney Channel series Wizards of Waverly Place is on the way.
Well, you know everything's gonna be a breeze. At the end, will no doubt justify the means.
The original show aired from 2007 to 2012, starring Selena Gomez as one of a family of wizards living in New York City. Variety reports original co-star David Henry is executive producing and starring in the updated version, which has been greenlit to shoot a pilot episode. Selena Gomez is set to guest star.
The nominations are out for the 2024 iHeartRadio Music Awards. Taylor Swift leading the list with 9 nominations, including Song and Pop Song of the Year with the single release of Cruel Summer. SZA tied with Jelly Roll and 21 Savage with 8 nods apiece, while Olivia Rodrigo is competing in 7 categories, including Artist of the Year. The iHeartRadio Music Awards are handed out April 1st.
And they won't understand it until they've used it.
In the film world, Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer has landed a leading 13 nomination at the BAFTA Film Awards, followed by comedy Poor Things with 11. Barbie received several nominations, but was left out of both the Best Film and Best Director categories.
The Stars Tonight is brought to you by Lastman's Bad Boy, court-approved liquidation sale.
A new survey finds fewer Canadians are saving money or investing, and the reason why may surprise you. We have your business headlines after the break.
No one should have to die that way. Especially cars should be paying more attention.
Updating our top stories, a 15-year-old boy is dead after he was struck by at least 2 vehicles this morning in Vaughan. Both drivers remained on scene as police try to figure out what happened.
We've got 1 in 5 of those operators who are looking at closing 1 or more of their locations.
Today was deadline day for thousands of businesses paying back money lent to them by Ottawa to stay afloat during the pandemic. Advocates had called for extensions, saying businesses are still struggling post-COVID.
We're being very careful. We don't want to have a ticking time bomb tucked away somewhere in our system.
And months after a cyber attack impacted the Toronto Public Library, officials say they're going to start phasing in some online services later in January. There are also plans to migrate the library's technology into the city's main system, which is considered more secure.
And remember to keep up to date day and night through our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca, and by downloading the CTV News app.
Financial advisors say you should pay yourself first, but a new survey suggests saving money has become more challenging for some Canadians. BNN Bloomberg's Jacqueline Hansen reports.
Setting aside money to save and invest has become less of a priority for some Canadians as they deal with a rise in basic living expenses. According to a survey by the Bank of Montreal, fewer Canadians contributed to their tax-free savings account last year. It found TFSA usage fell from 66% in 2022 to 62% in 2023. The survey suggests one of the main reasons why fewer Canadians are putting money into their TFSA is because they're prioritizing paying off debt instead. Millennials in particular are putting more money toward debt than investing right now. Let's take a look at some of the closing market numbers for today. The Canadian dollar is trading slightly higher to a touch above 74 cents US. West Texas Intermediate oil gained about $1.50 to almost $74 US a barrel. As for stock markets, the TSX added 61 points to end the day at 20,756.73. That is the latest in business. I'm Jacqueline Hansen of BNN Bloomberg.
The Business Report is brought to you by Canadian Western Bank, the bank built for business.
Turning to sports, and we mentioned it earlier in the newscast, the Raptors will try to make it back-to-back wins when they take on the Bulls tonight.
You don't know, this could blossom with
The team without Pascal Siakam took on the Miami Heat last night, and they came out strong, up 41-18 after the first quarter and led by 35 at the half. They would roll to a 121-97 victory to put an end to a 4-game slide. Gary Trent Jr. scored a season-high 28 points. Trent Jr. also made a season-high 8 3-pointers. R.J. Barrett added 26 points for the Raptors.
And the Leafs are looking to put an end to their losing skid when they face off against the Flames tonight. Toronto got off to a strong start in its last game against Edmonton, but couldn't close it out. The Leafs fell 4-2 to the Oilers. It was the 4th loss in a row for Toronto. Tonight's game in Calgary gets underway at 9.
One of Canada's brightest young tennis players is off to a fast start at the Australian Open. Felix Auger-Aliassime is advancing to the 3rd round in Melbourne. The 27th seed beat Hugo Grenier of France today. The Montrealer plays world number 3 Daniil Medvedev next.
A rapper and a country music star will take the stage at next month's Super Bowl in Las Vegas. Reba McEntire will sing the national anthem before the February 11th game at Allegiant Stadium. We also learned today that Post Malone will perform America the Beautiful. It's already been announced that Usher will be featured during the halftime show.
Just ahead, playful, full of boundless energy, and just a few weeks old. We spent some more time with the baby rhino at the Toronto Zoo. That's coming up.
Tonight, plugging into range anxiety.
It's been a really, really cold day. It's like 30% loss.
The impact of extreme cold on electric vehicles and the best ways to extend the charge. Later on CTV National News.
And a reminder, the CTV News at 6 podcast is available as a download every weeknight. And a special What's Up to those of you listening to the newscast live on News Talk 1010. The Toronto Zoo is sharing some behind-the-scenes moments of its youngest residents, a rare baby white rhino.
The youngster may not have an official name yet, but animal experts say he has a lot of energy. Adorable. The zoo shared this footage of the rhino, nicknamed the Tank Puppy, having what they called his daily case of the zoomies. They say he's becoming increasingly playful, interrupting his mom Sabby's meal times. The pair still cannot be viewed by the public as the zoo gives them time to bond.
And the zoo is also sharing a major milestone for their orangutan resident, Booty. He was born at the Toronto Zoo 18 years ago today. Staff shared some throwback photos of him when he was much smaller, but they joked that he's now in the running for GQ's Male Orangutan of the Year.
I'd vote for that. Bundle up if you're out tonight. Some snow showers reported in Toronto this hour. It is cold. If we look at the temperatures right now, -5, but feeling double that with the wind chill. And we still have several more cold days to go. Tomorrow, your Friday, flurries on and off. The high only 8 degrees. On Saturday, we get sun, but even colder. The high -9. Sunday starts to warm up a bit. We have the most sunshine in the days ahead, which is really nice. And then we see a shift, a high +1 for Monday, Tuesday, +4 Wednesday, a +3 on Thursday. Tuesday, Wednesday, look at that. Unsettled, could have some snow, could have some rain, might be messy there, so keep that in mind.
All right, good to know. Be sure to join Omar Sachedina tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Natalie Johnson with our next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For all of us at CTV News, thank you for watching and have a good night.